cloud. All right. So we'll get started. I'm Drew. I'm running a AdonisJS meetup for the next 2 months. While Caleb is busy doing softball. And just kind of go around the room. As I said, I'm Drew. We work here in this office at DirectLink. I've been working with JavaScript on and off probably since like 2003. And I've seen like various waves of different tools, libraries come along and disappear again and become legacy code. Started coming to these probably 2018.
Okay, cool. I'm Matt.
The laptop.
Oh yeah, I'm Matt. I am a UX engineer, software engineer, because I know whenever I say UX engineer, people think I don't code, but I do. I work for a company called Platform Q, which is based in Boston. I am remote from Syracuse. We work in Vue.js, and we are currently building the MVP of our software. Relatively new to JavaScript-ish. Previous job was JavaScript front-end development. Before that was jQuery and WordPress. Yeah.
So I'm Stefan, and I'm also pretty new to JavaScript. I guess to put things in perspective, I work for Infocon. They're on the other side of town, located here in Syracuse, and I'm an automation engineer, which is vague enough to be anything, but I happen to write code in our group, and we sort of deal with a bunch of like, sort of basically we're like an in-house engineering team, and we build like fixturing, test equipment, all for our production floor, which makes like basically sensors for semiconductor fabs and like mass spectrometers and stuff. But my role is kind of to do a bit of a back end data collection for all of the stuff we have that's automated, and some of the stuff I've been trying to do specifically with JavaScript is sort of our front end, so working on dashboards, working on like sort of manual data input type forms for tracking parts through the production cost process. So I'm relatively new to JavaScript. I've been doing it on and off for the last couple of months. So and it's something that I guess syntax wise I've done some C++. So like it's familiar, but it's just strange. So
I'm Mike. I do freelance WordPress, mostly PHP. I have a lot of JavaScript that I have to do though. It's not really JavaScript intensive, although considering the way the WordPress is going, it is going to be very JavaScript intensive.
I'm Edward. I do software development basically as a hobby. And I'm working with some JS and trying to look at web serial.
So at this point, we'll get into sort of what we did last month.
The browser. The font.
I don't know what this terminal is actually doing. It's virtual. All right, and share screen. So last month, we were expanding the sort of Sudoku application and solver that Caleb was working on. So the first one, we were given a list of numbers and check which digits from 1 to 9 were missing. Basically, we could make this like check digit array, and then filter on whether the numbers in the array that we were feeding into this function exist within that array. And then if anything did, or any numbers were missing, we have an array that had the list of missing numbers. The medium was given an array 9 by 9 matrix of digits, and the indices of square in the matrix determine which digits are valid for that cell. So this one we had to perform that same missing digits algorithm with the filter, but then like to it over the rows and columns inside of the matrices. So we're running through this, and we're sending in the matrix, taking for the rows and columns, doing it again in a row, doing it again in a column, and then returning what was missing out of the squares. Just kind of reapplying for each of the matrices. And then the hard one was given a 9 by 9 matrix of digits. Fill in the missing digits by assuming that there is at least one cell at a given time that is only one valid digit. This one ended up, the solution here works, but it's very specific to the Sudoku puzzle itself. It doesn't solve all Sudoku. Because at some point you come to a part of the puzzle where there are multiple correct answers. And when you get to that point where there's multiple correct answers, you're not going to be able to solve it with a simple algorithm like that. You have to make some kind of like intuitive guess. Or it's just that the Sudoku itself can be solved in multiple ways. But the process here, this is Caleb's code, and I think he cheated a little based on his to this point adherence on functional style. He did a do while loop instead of recursion. It's a little more efficient. And then we're in this do while loop. We look at the blank cells, and then for each, we find what the valid digits were. Valid digits comes from work we did in previous months. So we're reusing an algorithm from a couple months ago. And then finds the solved where the Sudoku puzzle has one correct answer. Squares provided. Did anybody else here do it? You have been here before. Anybody else take a crack at it?
I have not.
No, that's fine. Just talk about it if you did. And then next month, he's got them up in GitHub. Going to create a function that generates an array of digits from 1 to 9 in a random order. Create a function that generates a random 9 by 9 matrix of digits that is a valid pseudo solution. Generate a function that generates a random Sudoku that is solvable, single digit at a time, and check that Sudoku is still solvable, essentially. The valid solution, I believe, is that it doesn't run into anything. So you can't have that point at which it has. So you have to guess, yeah. So, that the catch up from last month. So this month ended up we've been using a library here to work on some of our JavaScript stuff called Adonis. It's based heavily on Ruby on Rails, Laravel, Django, and we've used any of those kinds of C frameworks before or heard of them. Batteries included, full stack, MVC framework as a counterpoint to sort of we had before said that the normal node frameworks are sort of Spartan or Edward. Yeah, it's actually for Edward. The Spartan frameworks like Express, Koa, so on, where it's just a bare metal server that's sort of a wrapper around the bare metal built-in commands.
What drew you to go with that versus like Ruby or Django, just like sticking with JS?
The driving factor was that we wanted to have a JavaScript framework, and we wanted to write parts of CMS in JavaScript. Why specifically? Because JavaScript is a fairly easy to find developer. It's a little bit harder in the area to find Ruby or even like C# and so on. But there are a couple of programs even around that are bootcamps for JavaScript. So it's sort of that, and the team being comfortable with JavaScript already. Where another team used Ruby, another team, myself, used PHP. So kind of in the JavaScript direction. Does anyone here worked with other frameworks in JavaScript? They're sort of
No. Does that count?
no,
It's a library.
kind of, but no.
The short answer is no as well.
It's the right time.
I'm sort of experimenting with some of the stuff that happens front end JavaScript onto Django and using Python backend, but I'm figuring that out.
That's,
Is jQuery a library?
it's a library, not necessarily a full stack framework.
Oh, all right.
No, I guess Vue would be. Right. Well, Vue is not full stack.
That would be front end. Yep. So the server part of the server of the client. Right.
Hey, Drew,
What's up?
you have something else on the screen? I don't see, I see PS.
You shared the Vue.
The one,
Oh, yeah. That's correct.
Just that screen up there. Share the full screen.
There we go. That's the ticket.
Awesome.
you walk us real quick what's going on here. So you do npm, init command, and then AdonisJS applet at latest. What is, I'm seeing what looks like others. What is that?
Okay, so this is npm is a package manager for our node. We're doing npm. We're initting a new folder. We're initting it with AdonisJS app at latest. So we're taking the latest version of Adonis,
Okay,
pulling it down from npm,
I see.
and then we are making an application called Hello World.
Got
once this runs, you have the option of selecting API, web, or Slim. The API is sort of the strictly server. It doesn't include the front end view templating engine that they have built into it. Web does include the templating engine, which is actually pretty good in terms of server-side rendered template engines. And then Slim has the minimum amount of stuff that you could possibly have in the Docs app. So no like placeholders for database or command line actions, things like that. Web. World. Set up the assistant. Sure. False. What you can do there is you can have Webpack compile your front end assets so that it'll unify and bundle up any JavaScript that you have set up similarly with fonts. So you can have like multiple smaller files on the page, send it like a 1 megabyte, 2 megabyte, 3 megabyte JavaScript file down the pipe every time.
Is this based? Yes.
It is all TypeScript based, yes. Which is the first time that JavaScript meetup has had TypeScript in a long time.
Here we use TypeScript. You, although we're using Vue 2, so we.
Okay. Yeah, the Vue 2 TypeScript interop is super.
Yeah, mainly because we're coming from converting an Angular app. It's predominantly TypeScript. So that conversion is just easier. Not a huge fan of it yet. I'm still working on accepting it and not using any for everything.
We have our working Donis app. Yeah. Ready. So stop it running.
We'll go lower.
You can actually open up this up in code and just go through the guts of the. So a lot of the work in this framework, because it's one of these batteries included, developer first, and basic frameworks, it does have a command line tool. We have a pretty large number of out of the box. We have a lot of built-in features where we can like, build the application, add configurations. It has a REPL where you can read, eval, print loop parts of the application. Like you can import a controller, if you're working on a controller, you can invoke controller methods, so you can see what's happening in real time as you pass data into it, like that. Make database calls with the REPL. It's been pretty useful. You have to do like pull data from a database, perform some transformation, and then pass it back to a third-party API. Sort of very quickly work on those transformations. Uses it's a little opinionated. So it comes packed with a test framework called Java. They have a article on in the documentation about like why they selected it over several other JavaScript frameworks. generate keys, listing routes. So when you do start building a bunch of routes and a bunch of controllers, you can actually list them and see like which controllers are mapped to which routes directly from the command line, which has been useful, especially for people coming into the application. You just kind of feel like we'll run node ace list routes, and then you can see like if you navigate to a particular route, which controller is invoked. And then there's some basic scaffolding where we can make commands, controllers, exceptions, listeners, middlewares. This thing, preload file, where it'll do something when the app boots up. So before the app is finished loading, it will run this as some like time event. Make new tests, make new validators, make a new view. Here, we decided not to use the templating engine. We are using it strictly as an API, which has been pretty good. And then use like a framework of your choice as the front end.
So if you're using this strictly, isn't the whole idea of this is because it has both of them? So why not use something else that is strictly focused on a backend, like Node?
Sure. So the reason for that is things like this, where you have very rapid development, where you can scaffold out your controller and have like your CRUD operations immediately right there, and then you sort of just fill out the business logic of the models where your data is being pulled out of the database, and it hand waves away a bunch of those sorts of those decisions that you would have to make if you use something like Express. And then you'd have to decide like, well, which database layer would I want to choose? Which modeling system do I want to build? You know, like those sorts of questions come up. This is already answered those questions.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess, but that also doesn't. There's less flexibility, right? It is very opinionated, right? Adonis.
Correct. Yeah, you're making a trade-off between the flexibility of you to choose all of this bespoke parts of your application, or to concentrate specifically on the business parts, the parts that are important, and let the framework handle that.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay.
And then, you know, at some point, you outgrow parts of the framework, and then you have to make bolt-on modifications. Sometimes it happens. For sure.
Does this allow pretty easily to remove something and swap something in?
Yeah.
As needed? Okay. Cool.
Yep. So in here, in our basic application, inside of start, we have routes. And because we did the sort of default application, we have a bunch of explainers where you can break these out into separate files if you wanted to. If the application starts to grow immensely, it starts to be like 5,000 lines of different routes. We sort of break them up. But at its simplest, it's route and then the HTTP verb. So this could be a get, post, put, delete, and it takes a function that returns, in this case, a view. It could return some JSON. It could return some XML, for instance. But here we're returning a view. And that view is welcome. Take a look at that. And that is there is oh Control F.
Yeah.
We're clicking blindly. This is AdonisJS. We'll do the welcome. Resources views.
There it is. Okay.
Resources views. Now we do know.
And this is just a plain, is this it's just HTML?
Just HTML right out of the box.
Does it allow for dropping in data like some of the view?
It does. Yeah.
The backwards.
Yeah. So as part of the controller review pipeline, you can pass arbitrary data into the view so that you can use that data to populate onto the page. It also has basic templating features like partials. You can do the header and the footer separately, and then kind of put the content part in between.
Are those considered views? Or are they like components?
What? The partials?
The partials, yeah.
They would be used, I mean, you could work them in a component style.
Okay.
You certainly could.
Are they called partials in here, and are they like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So like
partials.
in that make, would you be making a view for this, or is there like a make partial?
You would make a view that would be a partial.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's a type of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's actually invoke controller. So we've got our things controller now. And if we look at that controller, we have an empty controller. But with this and resource, so
Who named these?
Naming is hard.
Did you name them?
yes,
Okay.
so we got things and stuff. So now we have our resource controller where we have our list of things. When we create something, store up like
Is there
actually
a UX style store? How is it storing? Is it
so
local?
this would have to tie back to database model.
Okay.
We have to make a stuff model that we could use. But it uses a similar naming scheme to other MVC frameworks, where one of these is the actual API that needs to be hit. And one of these is the view. So in this case, index would return a view. Create would return a view. Store would actually be the endpoint for when we post a form to save data. So it would catch that data that we post from create. Show would return a view. Edit would catch some data. And then destroy would delete that data. And then it would return back to the index. And that's with the basic template. So much of these, if you're using API mode, we go through and we don't need to have both a create and a store. So it's pure so forth. Any questions so far about Adonis?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, actually, it's kind of related, but what are the other resources under resources that you use?
So nothing. You could have other resources. For instance,
Errors or other?
yeah, errors. If you're gonna have like error pages, if you're gonna put partials in there, you make a folder, and then you can store all the partials in there separate from reviews.
And it doesn't mess up any pathing to.
No, there's no magic pathing as far as that goes. It's all based on imports through standard JavaScript. Yep. Oh, that's a good question. Though. Yeah, there's our framework that do use like magic pathing like that. For its, convention rather than configuration.
By that you mean like the partials folder has to be a specific name? and it's
Specific name in a
recommended that,
specific
right?
directory.
Yep.
Do you have
That's
a
a specific naming scheme.
Do you have a local database that we could test with and try some posts?
Ask the question again.
Oh, do you have a local database that we could try some posts and kind of see how posts and Git work in here?
Sure. Actually, yeah.
Kind of in a similar vein, where would you put the database connection sort of information? Would that go in the actual function there for create and store, or is that they take it as somewhere else in the framework, right? That's kind of modular.
Yeah. So there's a method by which you can add database functionality.
Okay.
Actually, I will. Let me.
Wasn't like make database one of the options? The help thing earlier. I don't remember.
It was. I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second. And actually, I'll pull down a separate.
What is it?
This is a very important, very professional thing I wrote to prepare for this talk.
Oh my goodness.
We will. .biz. That's an actual website you can go to.
Of course it is.
The Discord got wild. Let's see. I want to clone this.
It's abstract, and then with the .biz, it just amplifies, just takes up another notch.
Yeah, somebody said those exact words into Discord, and then it had to exist. So now it exists. And we live in a post big money farts .biz world. All right, let's clone that. CD. Start sharing again. Find out.
Which
Just
is
make it. Okay.
I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so we should be sharing again. Here. Like that. All right, so the database parts. There is a command that you run that will install the database driver that you need. In this case, it's PostgreSQL. So it's PG is the npm package to do that. Then you can build a migration. you can make. Is yelling at me because I have not. So. Syracuse meetups has joined the Syracuse meetups.
I'm missing something. So are you running the like the npm install in like a different like environment or something in for JavaScript or something? So you can just tell the package manager install and then it does its thing.
Yeah, so they're are you familiar with Node in general or no? Okay. So Node is a runtime
Okay.
for JavaScript to run JavaScript on server side. And we have this configuration file package.json.
So you're already in like the project, it's just checking out the config, and if it's not on the system, it'll install it on the system.
Correct. Yep. So you have these dev dependencies, and we have the standard, like actual, like running in production dependencies.
Is it running Docker containers and Nginx container?
Ask that question again.
Is it, I saw Docker, you got some Docker in there. Yeah,
I do.
so it's spinning up a Docker, they're spinning up different Docker containers for your various.
I have not spun up the Docker container yet.
Oh,
But yes, I wrote a Docker container so that you need a full stack big money for step is.
That's specific to this project, not the test one we just made.
Correct. It's specific. Yeah.
Does Adonis have some things to help set up the Docker?
There's documentation on the website that walks you through building Docker image. Yeah. And then some of it is just good practices, like define this once, and then each one of these froms, these can be cached separately, so that you don't. Not every time that you like build your image, it won't build from the beginning. It'll build from partway through. Things like that.
so your server framework is Node.
Node running inside of Docker image. Yeah.
An Alpine. Yeah, it's an Alpine.
It's an Alpine.
All right. Now I got her.
Yep.
Here, what's serving? There's a server. What's doing serving?
Yep. So this Docker compose and Docker file are for local development, so that I don't have to manage Postgres on my local machine. I can spin up the Postgres image in Docker and can use that instead. If I want to get rid of it and no longer want Postgres on my machine, I can just delete it. Like that.
Keeping to get into Docker.
I would suggest it, and if that's something that people are interested in, and do something separate from JavaScript meetup, I can do that for next week. We're interested. Okay, so in here, there is a command that you run to install the database things. But as you asked before, resources, you can have CSS, images, for instance, JS, and reviews, partials. Database. That's not it. I want config database. So this part here is database.ts. That is a convention. There needs to be a file called database.ts in the config directory. For instance, in order to have the connection. This is all being pulled from .env file. Gets called throughout the application. We're using PG, which is the sort of node implementation of Postgres. And then from there, our app folder, we have models, where we have the data types that exist for. Right now, this is the only that we're storing like data. Use that by having this store method where we have email. We check to see if the incoming data through the request.
So what triggers that store? What you're calling, is it is it like the submit button?
Yeah, it is a submit button. So we can go look at.
So like, are you like saying to explicitly calling that store, or is it automatic because of the submitting that's happening?
Yeah, so we have a form. This is the
Post, right?
yeah classic.
Is it Crocs middleware?
This would not be middleware.
The controller,
The controller.
because it's getting in the middle of the front end. And
Yes. Well, it is middleware because it is in the middle of the request.
Okay.
So the request goes through a bunch of middleware, where you can add your own arbitrary middleware. And sort of the request response is a U shape where you can have a bunch of middleware on the left side of the view that comes down. Then at any point, if something fails, it will cut over to the right side to the response. Think about it in that way.
Yeah.
We have a request of incoming data and response of outgoing data.
Okay.
And at any time, like you can write like authorization middleware. We check to see if the user is authorized before they can access your controller. And if they're not authorized, we cut them out to the response and send back, sorry, you did not see that response. And you can use things like that for sure. But this is using form action and sending it to this email URL with the method of post. So if we check our routes, check our routes in start routes. There is an email, and it's using Center Control. That's smart. Center Control store.
So you are explicitly calling that store.
Yeah.
It's not, first of all, I thought it was automatic because of that post to that route. This sees that and gets in the way and does it.
Yeah, so what's happening is there's a request that comes into the application. It checks to see if that request matches a route. If the request matches a route, or if there's multiple matches for the route, it'll take the first one, whichever one's first. Once it has that route, it routes it towards the controller. If there's anything in the middle, nowhere, between the request that's coming in at the route and the controller, it'll run that. And if there's no failures, everything's good, it'll hit the controller, do whatever data it needs to do. And then if there's any middleware on the other side of that controller, it'll start passing through that until it reaches the end of the middleware and returns to the client. But in this case, what it's doing is it's coming in here, and then it's doing a response redirect. So it's redirecting us to a thank you page. So we're taking an email, we're passing them off, let's say they've given us their email to a thank you page.
And that response is the other side of that
Yep.
response.
Yep, the responses that were redirected. Any questions there? About anything else? So far, so good. We can see this in action.
Let's see. Big fun French stuff is.
Gotta see it, dude.
That's not, you have a local DNS server, right?
I wish,
Why?
I wish that were the case, but I bought the URL. And I had to do something with the URL.
Yeah, I mean, you have to.
It was a learning exercise,
Who doesn't have a million URLs?
learning how to deploy something with Heroku.
Okay.
So it is now deployed via Heroku. I learned how to set up the database in Heroku. You don't always get to choose your learning projects. Sometimes they're delivered upon you, and you just have to do it.
It's a calling.
It's truly a calling. So you can enter in an arbitrary email here and submit, and it'll go into the database.
Cool. That's, yeah.
Huh?
You guys need to yourself.
Haven't checked it. Locally, it works. Locally, it works. So we'll enter in. Real user. And definitely.
I can't spell them.
Real example. Email.
I am sure.
I have to make sure that when I name my variables are worth it.
Oh.
Oh, so apparently that's broken. Very good job. Yeah, so it is.
Did you set, how did your environment variables get configured for the ports from one application to the next?
Ask the question again? Sorry,
Your environment, are you using standard ports?
am I using standard ports?
Your Adonis application running the Docker container and your database container running the Docker container.
Yep.
Are you running like 3306? Are they both running on a conventional database port?
Okay, yeah. So with the Docker container, that's actually go to.
Because I was just curious as to how you were setting that up. I didn't see ports anywhere.
Sure. Let's take a look at the Docker.
Do we know what's wrong with the application or?
We.
Not
We-
mine.
You're working through it?
Yeah, I just put it in. Thanks, page.
Okay, well, it works on your machine. So that's something. I may have made the email too long, is what it might be.
Oh gosh, that's probably that.
It might have failed.
You should have named it more parts.
Could have named it more farts, but I did.
Farts. Fart, a fart at fakefarts.fart.
Yep. So what do we got here? We got. Okay, so before we got on that, and it worked on your machine. What were you asking about? You were asking about ports.
Well, we don't need, it works, so it's not a port problem.
It is not a port problem, that's true. But at least talk about it. So Docker Compose is a separate part of Docker where you can compose together multiple containers. So in this case, we have BMFB underscore Postgres, which is the Postgres, and it runs on ports 5432, which is pretty standard.
Okay.
So locally inside the containers, they can talk to each other. And then from the host machine, you can also connect to Postgres 5432. Similarly, Redis is running. It's not being used for anything, but it's there on 6379. And then the app itself is running on whatever the port environment variable is set to. In this case, it's 3333. It's also exposing magnitude 29, which is the bugger that's attached to the VS Code. And then you can have local volumes so that your data persists. Document here as you like. Kill your document, bring it back up, add data to it.
I know Docker pretty well.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
So then where is your Adonis application and your database application? What ports are they? Where does one have the other port as the other things ported? Basically, where does it know to connect over there at a certain port? One of these has to have one port number of the same configuration.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's here in example. So in here, you have the DB connection. This is the name connection in
Adonis.
the Adonis database.ts, and then localhost port user one, and then the actual name.
So this is the environment for the Adonis configuration.
The Adonis configuration on my local machine.
Got it.
So if when I deploy this to Heroku handles all of that for you, and it doesn't actually spin up an arbitrary Docker image. It spins up its own, and it handles all of the port. And you actually have to go in and have key name, key value for all of the environment variables that are in your application, which was a respect just had a file to do that for me.
I'm not familiar with that platform.
Yeah,
If you reset your keys,
I reset my keys.
for
Sans.
like the last one.
Why?
Oh, they had
I'm not super concerned. This is the only thing that I have on the road. But the Docker, the GitHub is taken care of. Yes, keep her of them. Cool.
Heroku or Heroku?
Heroku, Heroku. That's a cloud hosting platform, sort of intended for casual hobbyist kind of things. And then also it scales up.
Okay.
Voice from GitHub is pretty nice. I use it for, what was it? That's the server side.
Does it scale to 0?
Yes. That hosts this.
I didn't say. Cool.
I've used other cloud hosting platforms, like AWS. I used to do a lot with Linode. That wasn't cloud as much as it was like a VM server. Doing manual Apache configurations.
That's what the I have I like Apache. Now everything's Android.
Sure.
We already talked about that.
I think we did, yeah. Okay. Any questions about that?
I'll give it a try. I don't know what to think with it, but I might give something a try.
We'll go to the docs real quick.
Docker takes containers, it takes different packages, and then it sort of abstracts away file systems into these layers. So if you want to take a Docker container that has, let's say, Alpine Linux, just an installation, and you want to add a file on it, you'll just make a Docker file that adds that file, and then Docker will add a layer onto that image, and then you can take that image and then you can use make another Docker file that takes that image with that file that you added and add another file. So it's this really convenient way of abstracting away a lot of really annoying things.
One of the big things is if you have a team of people, you don't have to manage everyone's development environment. We just had one development environment that we're all working on.
Yeah.
It's pretty useful for that.
We have one for our database and I think our backend.
Yeah.
That just spin up.
Yeah, super useful. So documentation is generally pretty good. They sort of go over all of the different use cases that you might have. A lot of the basic sort of like spinning up a controller, wiring up models inside of those controllers. And then there's like deeper docs about specific database things where you have to make like complex queries or not use the ORM piece of the database and have to like actually do like raw queries and like that. It's been pretty handy so far and pretty productive to work in. And then you got things like cookbooks, setting up server-side validation databases, Postgres. There's ways to hook it up to like Mongo and other like NoSQL database systems. Any other thoughts, feelings, concerns? Have anybody worked on any new projects in the past month? Not really? No.
I haven't worked on anything.
Sure.
So I'm looking at the augmented reality, like tools and like how that works, and it's pretty cool, I guess. It's not, apparently all you need is a phone and you can get the Google Cardboard.
Oh, yeah.
So you only need like a phone that supports some type of augmented reality or virtual reality functionality. I don't know, it's gotta be like new enough or something. Then you get this thing card and you just use your phone. This $6 thing of cardboard and you can do it.
You check 3JS and Babylon.
No.
No. 3 is like basically Blender, but instead
Oh wow.
well, like
Yeah.
program F3 a Blender.
Oh.
And Babylon's also, but they both have like AR functionality.
Babylon JS, what was the other thing?
3JS. 3 spelled out.
This was pretty in college, but never got that far with it.
Sure.
It was fun.
I think Josh in the Slack, who does some like creative coding programming. I think at one point he was working with like TensorFlow or something to do like augmented reality with webcams. I might be remembering that wrong, but I believe that that is true. And he was using like a browser webcam to do like sort of drawing over the top of that.
That's a lot of people do that with different AI models. Is they draw or they like draw or meld. They do that. I've seen a lot of that.
So you're just like coming to, like at the beginning of looking into that? Or?
I was just looking around and I there's a lot of different like libraries that make it really easy.
Sure.
And it's you know the libraries are all they're all new, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean I couldn't find anything for how I could not find an answer for if your augmented reality app can use the microphone on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find anything. I
Sure.
found something where you can spatially identify things that are making sound, but I can't find anything that you can like hear something.
Mhm.
So that was a little annoying.
Sure.
Is there an API for that?
Just request permission.
Probably.
Well, I'm not sure.
If there's a JavaScript
And like you have to
microphone API.
browser. Yes. I'm not sure if you can do it on iPhone.
recognition.
Oh,
It
You
was-
have lots of these.
It was really it was frustratingly like I went through every single like method of like, well, not quite, and I didn't go through, I went on the page, all the methods, and I was like searching in the page for different things like audio, microphone, nothing. So it's like, you can do like all kinds of crazy things with like visual things, but apparently you can't like listen to a song and like do, you know, one of those like things that identify what the song is. Like apparently it's impossible. You can't just listen to it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so I guess I'd have to start to be a developer in augmented reality in order to figure out how to use a microphone. Or to whether or not I can use a microphone.
All right, I think I'm gonna cut the Zoom call there.
What have people been saying in the chat?
Thanks for hosting, Drew.
What was that?
So thanks for hosting.
Yeah, no problem. What was that, Caleb? Oh, 3JS next time? Yeah, could do 3JS next time. Peter signing off. Okay. Well, cool. Thanks for coming in on the Zoom meeting. Thanks for everybody coming here, and sign up for next month.